Hi there, my name is Johnny Barney, talking to you from little old Tasmania, Australia. You're listening to My Alien Life with Cameron Brower.
For some reason, I did not protect myself first, and we were all getting ready to go down there, and I was focused on something totally different and walked in the basement, and the second I went down there, I knew something was negative. What demons do is they attack the most vulnerable, and they also attack what's most vulnerable on your body. And I was in such excruciating pain, and by that point it was a little late. Finally, after about an hour, I walked over to my wife in agony, and she said, "You all right?" No. And I told her what was going on, and I said, "I need to go outside. I got to take care of this." And she said she wanted to go with me, and I said, "Absolutely not," because I didn't want it to jump from me to her.
Tonight in the studio, ordained minister and paranormal investigator Aaron Collins. That and more coming right up on My Alien Life. My Alien Life is recorded live from atop the Northern Rocky Mountains and is available on Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes, and everywhere fine podcasts are found. My website is at www.myalienlifepodcast.com. There you will find my email address, all previously recorded shows, and more. I am Cameron Brower. This is My Alien Life, and the podcast starts right now.
My Alien Life Podcast.
Three, two, 1, 0, and liftoff.
In the studio tonight, I have Aaron Collins. Aaron is a big part of the Gresham, Oregon paranormal scene and has been on TV. And Aaron, you have a podcast on YouTube. It's great to have you here, and welcome to the show, sir.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we jump right into it, you've played a really big role in the Oregon paranormal, and you've been even a tour guide in Oregon. We see you on TV. We can hear you on the radio. Is paranormal now a full-time gig for you, or just a passion?
It's mainly a passion. You would think it's full-time as much as I do, but it's mainly a passion. I've been doing this for a long time. I've been an investigator for over 20 years now, but it really didn't skyrocket until probably 2014. And that's when I started with my original podcast on Blog Talk Radio, which was when Paranormal Crossings was first born. And then it just went from there. The audience seemed to really like the show. And I didn't want to go for, excuse me, the norm, which was all the other paranormal investigators at the time and all that stuff. So I wanted, funny enough, I was watching Ghost Adventures, and they had a gentleman by the name of David Oman, who owns a home in Beverly Hills, about 200 feet from the original Sharon Tate home, as everyone knows, is where the 1969 Manson murders took place. Sharon Tate and other members were living at the time, and so he had a tremendous, and still does have a tremendous amount of paranormal activity. And so while watching the show, I thought, I'd really like to interview this guy. So I ended up friending him on Facebook, and he immediately responded to my request. And lo and behold, he ended up becoming a guest on the show and becoming a friend. And he was on many times. And it just seemed to skyrocket from there and just became easy and natural. I'm naturally inquisitive, love to ask questions. In fact, my kids always say I ask people too many questions. Well, how else do you learn unless you ask questions? So it just seemed to come natural to me. So I had a partner at the time who, a co-host, and then later on she ended up leaving and my wife became my co-host. And then at one point I had a friend who I went to high school with, who's an actor in LA. He heard the show and he called me up and said, dude, you got to put this on TV. So I went to MetroEast Community Media, which is the only way I knew how to do this, which was a cable access out here in Gresham. And I learned everything I could and became a producer. And so I went through all their training and started Paranormal Crossings locally through television here. And we were the first show ever to be a paranormal show at that TV station. And so they were excited about it. Local Portland metro area was excited about it. I didn't realize it, but once I took it off the air, I needed a break because I had quickly signed up for a series, not realizing how much work needed to be done. And excuse me, I was working full time, and I have a family, and it just took a lot of my time. And so I ended up taking a break from the series, and I just got flooded with emails from the public saying, "Where'd you go?" And so I was flattered, and I was excited that people were actually locally into the show. And so later on, I ended up bringing it back with my wife as my co-host, but just as specials because it was just a tremendous amount of work, and having, working full time and, raising a family and that type of stuff. It was just too much. And so I only do it now on special occasions with special guests and that type of stuff. So I don't do it all the time as much as I'd like to.
So how much investigation work are you doing right now? How much of your week is filled with that? Would you estimate?
A lot more than used to. We used to do a lot of investigations, and then that kind of subsided for a while. And then now, I would say ever since, excuse me, I appeared on Ghost Adventures last year, I've gotten a tremendous amount of calls for people needing a minister. And so, in fact, other teams have called me in and asked me to help them out. And so I've actually accompanied and assisted other teams on their investigations in helping out families that are requiring a minister. So I've actually been quite busy. We just got a call. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Let me ask you this. So you are an ordained minister. So how does that differ from that type of investigation when people call you? How does that differ from, when you're acting in the role as a minister? How does that differ from when you are doing a normal, I call it normal, but a paranormal investigation of a house or in just about any place?
It's not a whole lot different. Really, the difference is, as a minister, I go in and with the team, we determine what is the issue. Is it a negative? Generally, it is negative, and that's why they ask for a minister. And when it is negative, then my role is to, first of all, determine what it is. Second of all, once it's determined, okay, yes, it is negative, then how do I proceed? And generally that is the removal. And I'll go through, and there's a series, a prayer and a type of prayers that I use for those types of removals. And other steps with sage and things like that. I use holy water, anointing oil, sage, things like that. And then at the final step, I'll do a house blessing at the very end. And then I give the family instructions on what I believe they need to do after I'm gone. And when I check back with the families, because I always do, then I want to make sure that this worked. And if it didn't, if it's something that I couldn't help them with, or it didn't work, then I'll have someone else come in, because I want to make sure these people are taken care of. It's not all about me, and it's not about the team. It's about helping people, because that's why I do this in the first place.
So
there is a little bit different.
Do you have a vetting process to begin with? I'm obviously not all of these instances that you're going to investigate or help with are equal. Some of
Right.
them are less equal than others, and maybe something you don't want to deal with at all, and you don't feel that they would need your services. So how does that work? How do you vet the type of situation that you're going into, so you're not wasting their time and your time?
I haven't had one yet, to be honest.
Really?
I've had calls from, in fact, I never used to want to deal, this was way before, I never wanted to deal with any type of negativity as far as negative hauntings or demonic type of issues. Over time, one of my teammates, June Lundgren, who is and Wendy Stanton, they started dealing with demonic type of hauntings, if you will. And I ended up they actually asked me to help them with these demonic removals, me being a minister. I was a little leery at first, just because I had told myself a long time ago, I'm never dealing with these types of things. But I realized under my calling under God, part of my calling is to do this type of negative removals, demonic removals. And under studying and going with June and Wendy to do these, then that's where I under God, I gained my strength, because you show fear, you're in a lot of trouble. And I learned my lesson, which, when I talked, the whole reason why I did Ghost Adventures was I've had people say, oh, you probably got paid, you read from a script and things like that. That never happened. I didn't get paid a dime to be on Ghost Adventures. I did it, and the only reason why I did it is because I told them, I'll do this, but you better tell my story correctly. And that's exactly what they did. And so
what's that like when you're in a house and you don't know what you're going to experience? Now, I absolutely don't know if you're experiencing the same thing that the people had experienced and that's why they'd called you, or if you go in there and nothing happens and you're relying on information that they're giving you. Are you living some of those same experiences that they've had?
When we go into a house, I don't go in by myself. So my wife has abilities, and some of the other teammates that I have abilities. They're able to pick things up. We did have a case recently that I was called into, and it turned out that it was actually one of the people in the house that was actually bringing these things in. That was what was determined throughout the investigation. And this is why we do the investigation first. I interview the people first. Once the interview is completed, then we proceed based on the interview, how we're going to actually perform the investigation. And then once we're done with all that, the team and I get together and we decide, okay, what's the best way to tackle this whole thing, whatever we're dealing with. And it turned out it was actually this other person that really brought this in. And basically, they specifically requested a minister. And I was basically called out to clean up this person's mess. So there are times where we go into a place and we're not picking anything up. And that's not to say the homeowner or the person's lying. It's just spirits don't act on cue. We have to remember these were living, breathing people at one time. And they may be hiding in a closet or whatever.
Well, and I think that they discover vulnerabilities within the house too, and it could be people, it could be the house itself, it could be anything. But it's when you're around them, they're getting used to you, and you're never getting used to them.
Exactly. And we're going into their environment. They're not coming to us. We're going to them.
So
And
this is a question I've had for a long time, and I know people right now, and you can listen to my other podcast, that basically, they as they're walking through the mall or they're walking down the street, they're picking up stragglers, which they say they're ghosts, and they bring them home. Is that a good practice? I mean, even though that they feel that they're having some friendly experiences?
it's never a good thing to bring any entity home. Are you saying that they purposely do this?
Not purposely, but they become friendly with them and are used to having them around, and they do bring them home. So I know a couple of people who have had conversations with me about that, and they laugh about it. And to me, I always kind of wonder, is that a safe thing to do?
I don't believe it's a safe thing to do. The reason being is because it's just like leaving your front door open. People walking by, if they see your front door open all the time, then they're going to start coming in. You really want to let strangers in, because not everyone that comes in is going to be good. So you let that one in, then possibly the second one's not going to be as nice. And that may not be good for you or your family. So I would say no.
So how did you get interested in this? Because believe me, this is not for everybody. I mean, this is a tough thing.
It is. As far as the ministry part of it, or the paranormal altogether?
Yeah, let's talk about both.
I had an experience when I was 10 years old, and it scared the living bejeebies out of me. And I never forgot that experience. And so I always grew up with that fascination with the paranormal, if you will. And I always had experiences growing up after 10 years old with the paranormal. And so it was always a fascination. I ended up doing investigations through loss prevention, retail loss prevention. So I learned a lot of skills through that, and a fellow coworker and I both shared the same passion, and we thought, why don't we start doing our own out of our own curiosity? And this was back in the 90s, and apply the skills that we learned through our investigative skills through loss prevention, put a team together, and that's how Northwest Paranormal Investigative Team was born. As far as applying what I do through ministry, that's not why I got into ministry. I've been in ministry for a long time. I served as a worship leader for 10 years. It was never a thought to do anything with the paranormal as far as ministry goes. That came later. I realized that this was my calling. I mean, I thought, I'm in the paranormal, and then all of a sudden I see these people that need help in a different way. And I thought, I can do this. And I just felt like God pushing me into that way. And take that path. And that's what I've done.
And again, your experience as a 10-year-old, was that, I read in your bio, was that actually made part of a book?
It was. Erica Gammon from Ireland, she actually contacted me and said she was writing a book on different people's experiences, and asked if I would mind if she could write some of mine, or one of my experiences. And I said, I'd love to tell you my first experience. So I did. And so it's actually in her book, one of her books. She's written several. So
right. So what do you consider a negative entity removal, and what's the procedure, and how many of those have you done? Oh gosh, many. I don't want to tell anybody the full removal, because I don't want everybody to think that they can just go and do it, because I don't want anybody to get hurt. It's nothing to take lightly. They can turn on you. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And the one time that I actually went on an investigation and didn't protect myself, and I knew better, but I was focused on something totally different. It was a last-minute investigation in Astoria, Oregon, and that's when I got attacked. And it lasted 3 months, and it brought a lot of horrible things to me and my family for 3 months. And so it was a really horrible time in my life. So, which I'm not proud of, but the one time you let your guard down and not protect yourself, that's what happened. So that particular thing that you're talking about ended up on. Is that the one that was absolutely the most chilling thing that happened to you, and ended up on Ghost Adventures?
Yes, it was.
So that was
And
in the Norblad Hotel basement, right? In where is that?
it
In
was
Astoria?
in Astoria at the Norblad. They call it the Norblad Hostel. Yeah. And as soon as I walked down in that basement, I knew there was something negative.
Why were you
I'd
there?
been doing this. We were actually a group of us. Someone else put a whole group together, and a great friend of mine said, "Hey, why don't a bunch of us go up to Astoria? I can put an investigation together, and let's all spend the night, stay for the weekend, just have a fun time, and let's investigate." So my wife and I said, "Yeah, let's do it." And we went to a place called the Commodore Hotel and did an investigation in the basement there. Great investigation, lots of spirit activity, nothing negative. And we had a great time. And the gentleman who was kind of our guide down there, who actually is employed, excuse me, or was employed at the Commodore, I was talking to him and I said, "Man, do you have any other places that you can suggest that maybe we can investigate tomorrow night?" And he said, "Well, actually, the Norblad is our sister hotel." Yeah, I'd never even heard of the Norblad. And it was just a couple blocks up. And he said, "I'm sure I can get you guys in there tomorrow night." So he did. So it was, like I said, it was a last minute kind of thing, and it wasn't planned. And so I ran it by the rest of the group, and everybody else was agreeable to it. So we ended up going there, and that's how that happened. And so, like I said, for some reason, I did not protect myself first, and we were all getting ready to go down there, and I was focused on something totally different and walked in the basement. And the second I went down there, I knew something was negative. I have 2 spinal diseases, and I have rheumatoid arthritis. And what demons do is they attack the most vulnerable, and they also attack what's most vulnerable on your body. And for me, it's my spine. And it felt like somebody's literally squeezing my spine with a giant hand. And I was in such excruciating pain. And by that point, it was a little late. And so I endured it for about an hour while I was down in the basement and just kept trying to shrug it off and do what I can to get it away from me. And finally, after about an hour, I walked over to my wife in agony, and she said, "You all right?" "No." And I told her what was going on. And I said, "I need to go outside. I got to take care of this." And she said she wanted to go with me. And I said, "Absolutely not," because I didn't want it to jump from me to her, because she has her own health issues. And so I went outside. I did what I do to take care of it and thought I had completely taken care of it, and went back down in the basement and said, I got to go. I mean, when you're attacked, it's like literally being beat up. And after you've been beat up like that, you're completely exhausted and drained, mentally, physically, everything. And I said, I got to pack up and go back to our hotel. So we all did. And so we left, and that was that. But I didn't realize that I still had the attachment part, and which lasted, like I said, 3 months. And it really affected me in a bad way. And so later on, it was a week, I was still being affected at the time of the interview. In fact, what you did not see on the episode on TV was, because Zach or whoever does the editing cut it out, Zach asked me if I wanted help several times and offered to call in a priest or someone to come and help. But I was still being influenced, and I said no several times, which looking back now was really dumb because I should have taken him up on that help. But again, I was being influenced, and I didn't want the help at the time. And so I went a week after that and finally got the help I needed. And what they did was, it's called a purge, and they purged the attachment and then cut the cord, because literally you have a cord still attached, and which is why they call it attachment. And so that was finally gone. Things changed for me, and it was like the difference between night and day. And I mean, it took quite a while to get that done, but it again, it was like the difference between night and day.
So you're calling that an attachment. What exactly is attached to you?
Demonic entity.
And are you able to identify that, or how does that work?
With the demonic attachment comes oppression, depression, I was being influenced in every way. I started getting angry, which is not like me. I mean, I'm just a fun-loving person naturally. I love to smile, love to laugh. I'll make a joke almost out of everything, and I wasn't doing that anymore. My wife and kids started noticing, what is wrong with you? I would get angry over the slightest thing. And I was starting to get obsessed with watching things that I shouldn't watch, as far as demonic type of shows having to do with demonic. Like, first thing that happened was during the interview, Zach had told me about his movie Demon House. I'd heard of it, but I'd never watched it. So when we came back home after the interview, because it was 2.5 hours away, that night I watched Demon House, and I watched it by myself. I didn't want her to know, my wife to know I was watching it, so I waited till she went to sleep. So I watched it by myself, and I went through all kinds of anger and emotion and everything else. And after I had watched it, that next day, my wife started to get attacked, and she felt a hand grab her leg and try to pull her out of bed. And so I had to help her with that. Funny enough, while I had this influence, and then that's when the anger really started, and I was so out of character. I started having terrible thoughts, and so that's what an attachment does to you. It changes you. It wants you to destroy your family in some way, or wants to break up your family and any type of loving relationship that you have. And that's what it was trying to do to me.
So does this have to be resolved by a minister or religious ceremony, or is there something else that happens? You don't have to detail that, but I'm just kind of wondering how that goes.
You know, I'm not going to badmouth any type of religious entity or religion or anything like that, but one particular religion says you have to have a priest. Others say you have to have a minister or whatever. You don't. You just have to know what you're doing. My friend June, who is also what they call a demon seer, she was also on the same episode. She was able to finally get that attachment off of me, and she was able to do what's called a purge and then cut that cord. And she did that because of what the gifts that she has. And she wasn't able to see it at first because demons are sneaky and they're able to hide when they know they're being sought out, and when they know they can be seen. And so I don't have the ability to see like that. And so if you see the episode, then you can see where Zach says, I want to see what you see. And she holds his hand, and then he has the gift of that sight of seeing demons. Well, he also asked her to take it back because he couldn't handle it for very long. So that's the gift that she has. So she was able to help me, and she's not a priest or a minister or anything like that. She just has a gift of being able to do that, if you want to call it a gift. So.
I think that, these procedures have been around a very long time. I don't think that people have been putting them together, in the 21st century. So if you have a procedure to rid a human body of some kind of entity, and that procedure has been around for a long time, where did that come from? What are the roots of that and the origin?
As far as getting rid of it?
Well, the actual procedure, I mean, it's handed down from person to person, the actual knowledge of how to do that. But do you have any idea where that kind of thing originated?
Originally, the Catholic Church, and that's where it started from originally. And they started with the exorcisms, and that's who said that basically you have to be a priest and you have to go through their training to be an exorcist. And they have their own rules and guidelines and their own methods of performing an exorcism. And I'm not saying they're wrong. They have very specific methods, and it does work. But I am saying, this is my opinion, you don't have to be a Catholic priest. I'm not a Catholic priest. I'm not an exorcist either. So I don't claim to be an exorcist. But I have studied, and I have used different methods of prayer. Some I've adopted from the Catholic religion, and some from the Bible, some from other studies that I've done. And I have removed negative entities from people. I've done this from people and also from locations, and it has worked, which is another reason why I check back with these people. I check back with these families to make sure that, because I'm not going to go live there, but I'm going to check back and make sure that they're okay. And so there's a whole method of prayer, lots of prayer. Have to have faith first, and these are my opinions. So, and other people may debate, well, I don't think you have to have faith. Well, for me, I have to have faith. I have faith. I ask the people to rebuke. Do you rebuke this negative entity that's attached to you, or do you rebuke this negative entity that's in your house? It's important that you state these things out loud. They need to hear this stuff. They need to know they're not wanted. They need to know that they can't be here. They need to know they weren't invited here purposely. And then there's another method of using the holy water that's been blessed. And then after you use the holy water, there's the anointing oil. I always find it important to, once all these things, now this is over time, I'm saying them quickly, but this takes a long time. And then I use the anointing oil, which I always anoint that person. Do the same thing in the doorways of each doorway in the home, and also the windows. And then at the final step, then we also go through and we sage. And then once we sage from one end of the house and move it all through to the other end of the house, and then let it out an open window or an open door, the whole house is so much lighter. And so those are the types of methods that I use, and that's what works for me. So,
and I don't know if you've seen the movie The Exorcist, and there's a scene in that movie where they're actually discussing whether to perform an exorcism, and it kind of alludes to the fact that it makes it sound like the members of the Catholic Church in this movie don't want to have anything to do with it, because either they don't believe it, or they think it's something larger than themselves. But they too, it seems like they're part of such a huge group of people around the world. It would seem that there would be tens of thousands of people that could possibly need this help. And you don't hear about a lot of exorcism through the Catholic Church.
No. They deny a lot of people, and I don't know the reason why. They're really secretive, but they deny a lot of people, and that's why a lot of people they've separated from the Catholic Church and have gone to doing things a little bit differently. There's it's Bishop Brian, and I can't remember his last name. I can't remember. And he is, he's with, they have an order. Let's see.
Are you talking about Brian Ouellette?
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. So you're familiar with him. And I like him because, and the order that he's with, because he is, he was a Catholic priest. Then he became he didn't completely agree with the whole Catholic priest order, and he left. And he's actually part of the Order of Exorcists in Atlanta, Georgia. And they're actually larger than that. They actually have a branch out here in Oregon. And I can't remember the bishop's name, but there's a bishop out here. They have one in several states, and then they have a paranormal investigative team assigned to assist this particular bishop for paranormal activity, because they realize people do need exorcisms. They do need, not everybody that claims that they have demonic activity need to have an exorcist, obviously. So there's an application process, which they should. When we do an investigation, that's part of an investigation. That's the reason why we do them. Not everyone has a negative entity in their house. That's why we do an investigation, to determine. and there are some people who, they see things, but it may not be a spirit. They may have some mental disabilities or something going on that's a little more than just spirits in the house. And so, and I'm not a psychologist. I don't claim to be one. But sometimes, and I did work for 3 years in the industry of working with adults with developmental disabilities. And so I did provide one-on-one care for a gentleman who had schizophrenia and some other disabilities. And so, it's a fine line, because back in the day, when you told people you saw spirits, they'd throw you into a psycho ward, back in the 50s, 60s even. Today's day and age, it's more, paranormal's more open. We're more open to listen to people who say that they have paranormal activity in their house. So, but no, we need to be more open to people who claim that they have demonic activity, and it needs to be investigated. And I think that we should have people like these folks to take a look at this stuff.
I think Brian,
and not be shunned.
Yeah, I think Brian Ouellette. I don't know. I remember how his name is pronounced, but I think it's Ouellette, or it's a French word.
Yeah.
And
Ouellettte.
And I think he actually went out and started his some sort of independent church, and it was an apostolic, esoteric type church. But if I remember right, he had degrees in psychology, and he helped. He had clients and patients that were schizophrenic, bipolar, and he had worked with people with brain injuries. So, I think he was one of those people that would kind of go in, by himself and perform these exorcisms. And I don't really know too much about the exorcism part. I just know he's out there doing that. Do you think that when there's an entity in somebody's house and they're having these issues, and obviously, like, if you go in there, it's not going to happen exactly like they've seen it, and you may see something completely different. How many times would you go back? I mean, if they're that passionate and animate about, the truth, and this is happening in their house, you're going to go back more than once?
Oh yeah, I'd go back as many times as I could to help them, because that is my passion. When I first started in the paranormal, it wasn't my passion to help. It was my passion because of curiosity. We all wanted to investigate and capture, spirits on tape at the time, because we're talking 90s, and video. Now my heart's changed. I have complete respect for spirits. I treat spirits the way I treat people and the way I want to be treated, and that's with respect. And so I want to help people. That's my heart now, and which is why I got into ministry to help people. And that's why I do what I do now. So I would go back as many times as it took to help a person or a family out. So I wouldn't put a limit on it.
Right. And I know the Catholic Church, they have levels of exorcism. You have a baptismal exorcism. Basically what happens when you're baptized. There's simple exorcisms where they'll bless a place or thing. And then they have the real exorcism, which is a rite of exorcism to rid a human. Do you think it does start at birth, that with a baptismal exorcism, there may be a less likelihood that you could have this problem in the future?
That's a good question.
And I don't, you notice I keep saying problem. I don't even like to say
right.
I don't even like to say it. That's why you're here.
Right. Less likely, no. I don't think so. I don't think it matters if you're baptized or not. I mean, I would love to say once you're baptized, then you would be free of it. That's a good question. I think you stumped me. And that takes a lot. I think.
I mean, it couldn't hurt, right?
I think it couldn't hurt. It was like back in biblical days when they put the blood on the doorways, where the evil spirit would pass by. Maybe it might help a little, but it would definitely not be a full 100% measure against a demonic force. No,
right.
They're so strong. Unfortunately, one of the things that gives them strength is fear, And once they find that fear in you, then it builds. And that's, unfortunately, people have a lot of fear, and I don't blame them. It's not fun. It's scary. And once they find that fear, they'll enter your dreams. And when they enter your dreams, then they influence you. And then, it goes on and on and on and on. And so it's horrible.
If you look up, and I have looked up exorcism, basically when the Catholic Church deals with it, maybe they do deal with it differently than you would read on the internet or watching the movie The Exorcist, but they talk about telltale signs, speaking or understanding languages that you've never learned, knowing things that no earthly person would have any way of knowing, physical strength beyond belief, and an aversion of God or to the Virgin Mary and the cross, and images of the Catholic faith. Now, there's got to be more subtle signs that happen before you start speaking in some language that you've never understood or heard before, or know.
Yeah.
So what are those? What are those signs? What do you see, or what do you think would be a sign that people may overlook?
There was a case that we had, one of the first cases that I had, that I accompanied June with. Actually, my wife and I did. This gentleman he was probably 55. But when we drove up, the guy looked like he was probably 67. And he was outside and all hunched over, walked over to us, introduced himself. And we went into this beautiful house. And I'm talking beautiful property, beautiful house. And once we were done, and this demonic entity was unbelievable. It had been there a long time. And once we were done, it was so bad, it grabbed me in my chest and felt like it was squeezing my heart. And that scared me. It literally scared me. And I was a baby at this, to be honest. But once we were done and I finalized everything with a prayer, or we all did collectively together, because we all got in a circle. I don't like to say I, because there is no I in team. And I always believe in working as a team, no matter if it's me and two other people or one other person or my whole team. We're always a team. And so we prayed, finalized everything. And I tell you what, I looked at that man as we were leaving, because he walked us outside. He was smiling. He looked like he was probably 45 years old.
Wow.
It's amazing the difference when you have this negative oppression, because they will completely change the look on your face. They'll change your body. He wasn't crooked anymore and hunched over. He was standing tall and looked like a movie star. I mean, it was unbelievable. And she's checked back with him many times. He finally decided to fulfill his dream and moved to Italy, and he's doing great. And it's just, so that's one of the signs. If a person, your loved one, is starting to change physically, that could be one sign. It also could be health things. So, people can debate that. But I'm telling you, as far as the demonic part of it goes, that's one sign that people overlook, is the physical change. It's not always, well, they're angry. They're getting angry all the time at things. It could be just the look, their eyes. Look at their eyes. Their eyes turning black. They're staring off into nothing. Things like that. So that's one of the things that people overlook sometimes.
And you think about all those times that you hear about people who get sick really fast, and then they go and see a doctor, and they go to the Mayo Clinic, and they never can find out what's wrong with them. And I've heard those stories, and that really makes me wonder. Do you run into stories like that?
No, but this gentleman's wife. Actually, I take that back.
That sounds similar.
No, a lot of people that I've talked to. Actually, this last case I just had recently, the lady said, ever since I moved into this house, my health has declined, and the doctors can't figure out what's going on with me. And so this was actually just a couple of weeks ago. And so we went through, we did a house blessing, we did all these other things. And, but yeah, she had been physically attacked. I mean, I took pictures of her arm, and it looked like finger marks, like somebody had grabbed her arm. And this happened while she was asleep. And so, But yes, she had the same issues. All of a sudden, she ran into all these health issues, and she was a nurse. She was retired, but she had been a nurse for many, many years. And she said, I can't explain this. The doctors can't explain what's going on with me ever since I moved into this house. So yeah, I have heard of things like that happening, and that will happen to people.
In the episode of Ghost Adventures that you appear in, there's a lady that's with you, and it's right at the beginning, and she's talking to Zach, and she says to him something about she can hear somebody speaking in a language, and she says it's Aramaic, which is a Sumerian dialect, I guess. Is that a common thing? That Aramaic to be a part of a some sort of possession?
It is. It is part of a demonic or a demon language. They can use a lot of different languages to communicate, and that was the first time I had heard on television someone talking about it. I'd read about it, but I'd never seen anybody talk about it on television. So that really, I thought, wow, you know exactly what you're talking about. And she's talking about these people underground too.
Yeah, that's
underground Astoria,
crazy. Yeah, and then
yeah.
I think and I hate to even go here with this conversation, but Aramaic is a Sumerian language or dialect, and a lot of times the Sumerians are associated with the Anunnaki. Well, the Anunnaki, and they're associated, and of course, when you're talking about Anunnaki, you're talking about aliens and it's, and then there's a full circle where people will tell you that aliens are demons, and I'm sure you've seen that.
Right.
And when you're on Facebook as much as I am, and you talk to as many people as I do, there are people out there who want to initiate that conversation that aliens are just really demons in disguise, or maybe they're not in disguise, but
yeah. What do you think about that?
What do I think about it?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, I can understand that people see this relationship, and for a long time I really didn't understand why that they how they came about this relationship, but I'm sure it's like the seven degrees of Kevin Bacon or whatever it's like. I mean, you can go off on about 20 different directions, and you can end up back at religion or back at UFOs or Bigfoot or whatever. It doesn't take much. So I think that's one of the confusing things, is that there is that. And I think that people, especially the people who are really involved, it seems like people, have some sort of event or something that happens, or an experience when they're young or middle-aged or whatever, and then they research that and they get deeply into it, trying to answer questions and figure out what's happening in their own lives. And they see these different entities, whether they be aliens or demons, as a symptom. So they kind of follow the symptom, and then they follow it into different genres of the paranormal. And I think that's interesting, but that's not me. I kind of have a separation between all of those things. To me, they're different things. And, I look at the Sumerians because, I have an archaeological background and come from studying ancient people of the Middle East. And I think it's interesting that there's some parallels, but then again, we're just human beings, and we tend to have the same thoughts, possibly because of our origins and our chemistry, really.
Yeah, definitely. I've never really studied the UFO stuff and the alien stuff. Not that I'm opposed, because I would love to start covering that kind of stuff. But I just recently started watching a show called Alien Highway. Have you seen that?
No, I have not seen it. I've heard of it. Yeah. I've heard of it.
The lead investigator, he's a former sheriff deputy, and his son is on there, and an actual. Well, it says that he's a law enforcement officer, and then there's a female, and she's a paranormal investigator. And actually, I'm pretty impressed. Not a lot of shows impress me, but I've kind of gotten into this, and I've seen all 3 episodes so far. So yeah,
it's fun to figure this stuff out and ask questions and come back with healthy answers. But you, in the discipline that you've attached yourself to, I probably could have come up with a better term, but if you're going to study anything paranormal and you've decided on this, I mean, do you think that there's a long ways to go in your study? I mean, I do. I think there's a lot there, and we're just scratching the surface, right?
Oh gosh, yeah. Anybody who calls themselves a paranormal expert, I kind of bat my eyes and think, wait a minute, because none of us are experts. I mean, we're still learning all the time. That's why we're coming out with new scientific tools, because we don't know the answers. None of us do. Same thing with UFOs and aliens and things like that. None of us know the answer. That's why we're constantly investigating, because we're always learning. I'm always a student. I'm always learning in this field. And so, and I enjoy it. I enjoy to learn.
And I think with you too, I mean, so my background is anthropology, and I also had a minor in religion, comparative religious studies. And what we dealt with was, we're talking about Native Americans, and we're talking about Catholic churches, and we're talking about Tibetan Buddhism and things like that in comparative religion. And, they all deal with it differently, and they all deal with different kinds of entities, yet there's always those similarities that are it's spooky. I mean, there are big similarities in religions that are 2,000 years old, or that are in another country, and it's kind of some of the same things and some of the same superstitions.
Oh yeah, definitely. I was asked to do an investigation at one point where there's a Indian burial ground, and I went out there and I looked, and this is a respected individual here in the community who runs a historical site here in Oregon. So I went and checked it out, and while walking out in this area, I just didn't feel that it was respectful. I just felt like, first of all, it was desecrated in the first place because the county or whoever, the state, ran a highway straight through this burial ground, and which was wrong. And the homes near this area, they've had a lot of paranormal sightings as far as Native American Indians walking outside their spirits, but walking outside their windows, and these people were scared and things like that, which is why they asked me to come and do an investigation. And I came back and I said, I just can't do it. And they said, why? And I said, because I feel like I'm being disrespectful by doing an investigation, number one, on their land, number two, on an Indian burial ground that was already desecrated, by quote unquote the white man, by putting in this highway. And I don't know what, I just don't feel right. Something's telling me not to do it, so I have to respectfully decline. So I didn't. And I still stand by that today. Sure, it would be nice to learn more, and would it be great, sure, to capture, a Native American spirit on video, but to me, it wasn't worth that, feeling like I was disrespecting the spirits. And so I just couldn't do it. And so I didn't. And I still feel good about that decision. So.
And working as an archaeologist back in the late 80s, early 90s, I had many times where we did surveys and we did digs and for highway projects and Forest Service projects and things like that. And yeah, you'd be really surprised where you're digging up Indian remains and other native remains around the United States. I mean, you got to realize too that those are the ones that we do see. And these people have been around for 10,000 years in the United States. So it's not unusual for that to happen. And I know a lot of people normally have, equate a paranormal experience with a house or a building or something like that. But I mean, these people lived outside and their whole subsistence was nature and that's a huge part of it. So, I mean, there should be some respect there for that. And,
absolutely.
it's really hard I know it's hard to stop technology, but, then again, we've come a long way so fast that it's really hard to go back. But do you think that, your ministry in paranormal studies, lend itself to a peaceful coexistence together for you and your family?
I think so. My youngest son, I used to give the Shanghai Tunnel tours, which is the Portland Underground here in Portland. And he was an assistant tour guide. And one of the things that I taught him was the same thing I mentioned to you before. And also my stepson also did that too. They both helped me on these tours. And one thing that I taught them both was to be respectful and of spirits. Again, like I said before, I treat others the way I want to be treated in life, and that's with respect. And the same thing with afterlife. I treat spirits with respect because I want them to treat me with respect as well. And they deserve it, in my opinion. So when I went to do the tours, there were days, well, as a tour guide, your job is to open up the underground and set up the lanterns and just set up for the tours. So when you go down there, it is pitch dark. And I'll tell you, it is scary. And at the time, he was, 15 years old, both of the boys were, and they were scared to death. And so I would say, look, just come with me and I'll show you how I do it and blah, blah, blah. And I always talk to the spirits. I would say, hey guys, it's Aaron. I'm here to set up for the tours. I hope everybody's doing well, and I would tell them, look, here are the rules. The rules are, you can please show yourselves if you wish to people, touch people appropriately, but please don't follow anyone home, and please don't follow anyone, any of the tour guides or any of the workers home today. And let's just all get along great today. And my kids at first, they were like, you're nuts,
Yeah.
But they started seeing spirits. And my stepson actually saw a full-blown apparition of a soldier from World War II. And I mean, he was shocked. I mean, scared shocked. But then I showed him that, it doesn't have to be scary. Because you see an apparition, that doesn't have to be scary. You can coexist. And we're in their environment. They're curious. What are you doing here? And that's why every day I went down to do the tours and set up, I would talk to the spirits. I could never get those kids to do that. But because they were scared that they were going to talk back to them, which they did. They talked to them and they talked to me all the time. They tapped me, they touched me. I heard my name called all the time. But it was in a friendly way. It was never in a negative way ever down there. And so, but yeah, we can coexist. My wife, she's very sensitive. She has psychic abilities that she uses on our team. She uses in life. And it works very well. And so, it's funny. We're a paranormal family. Even my parents, they've watched us on Ghost Adventures. They've watched our show Paranormal Crossings that my wife and I do. And so it's more accepted now, a lot more accepted. My sister, she loves this stuff. She's had a love for the paranormal since we were both kids. And so she sees spirits. She has abilities as well. So our family coexists. And I'm proud of what I've done. And
go ahead. I finish that, please, because you're going somewhere good.
Oh, I'm just proud of what I've done. I don't regret any of the things I've done in the paranormal. I'm proud of the respect that I show the spirits. And I'm proud of the work I did down in the Shanghai tunnels, even though I no longer do it now. But I'm proud of the film work I've done. I'm proud of the ministry that I'm doing. I'm proud of my team, and if I could give them a shout out, it's Christina, which is my wife, and James and Heidi Mitchell. It's Wendy Stanton, June Lundgren, and now Emily and Catherine. They're both sisters, and we got a good, solid team, and we all work well together. And again, there's no I in team. We all work well together. So I'm very pleased. And again, like I said, we have an investigation tonight. Like I told you before the show, a family that's in need, and that's a priority for us because there's children involved. And so that's why we decided we need to go out immediately and take care of this. So as soon as we're done with the show, we're going to pack up and head out and help this family out across town.
Very cool. I have one more question before I do that, though. I want to.
Sure.
One of my favorite books. You're talking about Shanghai tunnels, and quite a few years ago, I became interested because of a book that I stumbled on, and I was working up one time in the middle of nowhere, barely had any internet, and found a free website online that allowed you to download books free of charge. And I downloaded a book, and it was called Moran of the Lady Letty. It was written in 1898 by Frank Norris. And I don't know if you've ever read it, but since then I've read it about 10 times, and it's probably the best book I've ever read. But it's about Shanghai tunnels in San Francisco, and how they got these Chinese sailors got a hold of a guy, and they took him out for months because they were hunting sharks, and the adventure. But I just never forget it, because the first line in the book is this is to be a story of a battle, at least one murder, and several sudden deaths. And it's just a fantastic book. Wow. It's called Moran of the Lady Letty. It starts in the Shanghai tunnels and ends up out on the high seas in the Pacific. But let me ask you this one question. What's that? Go ahead.
Oh, you'll have to send me that link.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or at least send me the name of the title, so I'll have to get that book.
And it was made into a movie a long time ago, but it's in reprint, so it's fairly cheap on Amazon now. But paranormal investigation and research, did that change you or shape you?
Both. It really did. It did both. I have a little bit better understanding now than I did before. But again, I'm no expert. I'm still learning. There is something more than what we were all taught when we were younger. We just don't know what it is still. And we don't know why. We don't know why spirits are still here. I was taught, as a Christian, you're taught that you die and you go to heaven or you go to hell. And so why are there spirits? We still don't know why people linger. I help, our team helps spirits cross over all the time. And we don't know why they're stuck. And so it has definitely helped mold me and shape me and help me in a lot of ways. And I love what I do. I love what our team does together. I wouldn't want to do this by myself because we support each other, and collectively, once we do an investigation, and even during the investigation, we talk about it. And one person sees something that the rest of us don't, and vice versa. And it's amazing what other people see that you don't, or ideas that other people have that you don't. And it's amazing. It's just, I wouldn't have it any other way.
Aaron Collins, it's been a great pleasure to have you. And real quick, let everybody know where they can find you online if they want to ask you questions, or maybe want to contact you and get in touch with you for your services.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Cameron, for having me on. It's been a pleasure. And yeah, if anybody wants to get a hold of me, they can get a hold of me on Facebook, just under Aaron Collins. And then also you can find me under Paranormal Crossings, NW Paranormal Investigative Team. All those are under Facebook. Or you can go to nwparanormal.net, which is our website. Yes, I need to update it, but you can still go there. Also, the one thing we didn't talk about, if I could just talk about real quick and squeeze in there, I am a planning committee member for the Oregon Ghost Conference. And we are going into our 9th year next year, 2020. And it's at the end of March. You can go to OregonGhostConference.com. It's held in beautiful Seaside, Oregon, which is right on the Oregon coast. You can't get any more beautiful than that. And I've been involved since 2015. I am one of the lead investigators for the paranormal investigations out at the conference. People pay to go with us on investigations. It's an authentic investigation. But we also have ghost tours. We have speakers and teachers, vendors. We have all kinds of wonderful things that go on at the Oregon Ghost Conference. We have a kid zone, paranormal kid zone, where kids can actually do things hands-on. And I also teach kids how to use the different paranormal equipment that we use, the scientific equipment, which is hands-on. I like to let them play with the equipment after I explain on how they work. So it's a lot of fun. Kids have a lot of fun. It's fun for the whole family. And it's 3 days, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Just go to OregonGhostConference.com and get all the information that you need. If you're interested in being a vendor, speaker, teacher, or something like that, there's an application process, and you can find all that on the website. And then you can also email me if you like. It's Aaron, AARON, .NW Paranormal @gmail.com. Well, thanks again, Cameron. I really appreciate your time.
Aaron, thank you very much. I know you got more going on later tonight and a lot more in the future, but let's touch base sometime in the next year or 6 months or so, and you can fill me in on what's been going on. Thank you very much, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you.
My Alien Life Podcast.
You can find my website at www.myalienlifepodcast.com, and please subscribe to my latest downloads at iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and at podbean.com. And please follow me and like me on Facebook and Twitter. My Alien Life is written and produced for broadcast at Studio 254 in the Northern Rocky Mountains. The music you are hearing is produced and created by Elion. You can find all Elion's work online at Heart Dance Records.